Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm really pleased to be back. Somewhat, I can say to some people, same old faces, but nevertheless, it is an enjoyment to be here. We all have a passion for transport, don't we? We wouldn't be here otherwise. So I'm taking it as read that we want to participate and do the best that we possibly can for the West Midlands. The next item on the agenda is apologies. Janet?
Chair, Lorinda Kohler.
Okay.
And
Janet?
received an apology from Zachar Chowdhury.
Okay. I've heard Zachar Chowdhury and Lorinda Kumar. Are there any other apologies? Okay.
Anthony Tucker.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I see none. Item 4. I understand the revised terms of reference has been sent out. Mr. Essex.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and with apologies first of all if incorrect and all sets of terms of reference set out. So, but within the amended pack, these are the terms of reference that were agreed by the WMCA board for this new committee. So they're here for information and to note. I'll just add that obviously as a new committee, as the work of it develops during the course of the year, these are subject to change. So don't think that they're set in stone, and we will look constantly to review them and enhance them as the committee finds its feet and its voice and to reflect that. So they're there just for information as your first meeting, and we will no doubt revisit them during the course of the year.
Any questions, any comments? I see none.
Chair.
Councillor MacDuff.
Chair, I want to say thank you to West Midlands Combined Authority Board for accepting 7 members from Birmingham, because as you know, Birmingham is our biggest city, and when Birmingham thrives, then we all thrive. And having a proper representation for Birmingham is utmost importance to all of us. And thank you once again.
TDOS terms of reference is duly noted, but I'm pleased to make the comment and that they will be subject to review by the committee, because that is important. We need to understand the terms of reference and how it. Thank you very much. Next item, Transport for West Midlands overview. Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody, councillors and members of the committee. I just wanted to provide, since this was initially proposed, there has been a session, I think, for new members that with Anshaw, for members of the committee, looking at a broad overview of the activities and functions of Transport for West Midlands. That's for those committee members who were new to the functions in this area. Hopefully that was informative and helpful. What we are proposing and asking from this session, Chair, is if it would be helpful to this committee, and particularly those members who are new to the functions in this area, if we provide a follow-on more detailed session looking broadly at some of the delivery programmes in which the scrutiny will be looking to monitor and overview, to provide an additional level of if you like, subject matter overview and expertise. We were proposing, Chair, that if that was something that the committee members would welcome, we would include such areas as the Swift and ticketing, the Sprint and Cross City Bus, the safety and security programme, the rail programme, the metro programme, plus delivery options work around the enhanced partnership and franchising, and the RTCC and network resilience, as well as an operational overview. So that's something that we are proposing to pull together. If members of the committee would welcome that between now and the next meeting. But really wanted to get a sense check and understand from committee members if that we can provide that. It doesn't have to just be for new members as well, of course. It can be an overview and briefing, and will generally be put into a half a day.
Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Chair. It'd be good to do that, but it's up to all of us to decide. Also, I'm interested in the passenger transport safety officers, how they're going. I think it's a very good initiative, and I know it's. No, I'm keen to know more.
Okay. Any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you very much, Chair. As Mr. Bond has referenced, there's quite a few new members to this. Would it be worth introducing ourselves?
A good idea. I didn't mean to do that. Thank you very much. Okay, my name's John Nicholas. I represent Coventry along with two other colleagues. And on my left,
So I'm Anne Shaw, I'm the Executive Director of Transport for West Midlands as well, so some of you already know me. For those of you who don't, hopefully now you know who I am.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Pete Bond, Director of Integrated Transport Services for Transport for West Midlands.
Essex the Government Services Manager, Scrutiny.
Director of Strategic Partnerships and Integration of Transport for West Midlands.
Councillor Steve Melia, Sandwell.
Councillor Bond Authority, Wolverhampton.
Councillor Carol Hyatt, Wolverhampton.
Ian Birmingham.
Councillor Select,
Pervez Akhtar from Coventry.
Councillor Tim Huxtable, Birmingham City Council.
Councillor Martin McCarthy, Solihull Metropolitan Borough Council.
Councillor Joshua Irons, Solihull Council.
Councillor O'Brien, Birmingham, elected for Edmonton Ward.
Councillor David Stanley, Dudley.
Councillor Alan Tyler, Dudley.
Councillor Anwar Hussain, Walsall.
Also Singsthorpe Hall, Walsall.
Councillor Emma Marshall from Redditch.
Kate Taylor, Head of Finance, Business Partner in Strategic Planning and Deputy by Board Officer. John Sheetson, Governance Services Officer. Lindsay Roberts, Scrutiny Officer for the Combined Authority.
Councillor Mary Locke, Birmingham.
thank you very much. We'll all remember that immediately. But we will get to know each other over the year, and I'm sure we will have a very good time. Thank you very much for the reminder, Councillor Huxtable. Could I also request that members do use the microphone, because this is being recorded and obviously we do need to hear what's going on. Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to make comment on Mr. Bond's contribution, or shall I move on? We're going to get through this meeting very quickly, aren't we? Next item then is from Anne Shaw, TFWM Reimagined. Over to you, Al.
Okay, so this is a verbal update. I think we were asked to just provide some information to the board on what we were doing around the reorganisation of our delivery function here within TFWM. We've grown up over the last few years with funding that's come different different initiatives, all come separately with different government initiatives as well. But last year we were the recipients of City Regions Sustainable Transport Settlement. So that's over £1 billion worth of delivery funding over a 5-year period, which was for us as the Transport Authority, but also for our local authority colleagues as well to carry out capital delivery. So that's quite an extensive programme. And for the first time, we've had a longer term settlement around funding. It also means that we needed to look at how we were doing delivery. So we've also seen over the last few years, and particularly during COVID, the inflationary pressures and other things that have impacted on capital costs for those schemes, that we're looking at how we are actually performing, us as Transport for West Midlands, along with our local authority colleagues as well. So I initiated a review of how delivery happens in this organisation. I used a consultancy to come and do what's called a maturity assessment. So they looked at how we plan capital delivery and how we organise the activities that are needed to undertake that. Now, they made a number of recommendations to us about what we needed to do in order to improve our performance, to manage budgets effectively, and also, more importantly for me, is to remove some of the silos that we operate in. So sometimes we'd have bus funding for a bus scheme, or we have rail funding for a rail scheme, or some money for a cycling scheme. And particularly for those schemes that happen in the highway space, actually the opportunity is to look at integrated delivery as well. So you're delivering a broader set of infrastructure that supports people moving around the region as well. So I've gone through a design process on the back of those recommendations, and then an internal consultation, because obviously it involves a number of staff here within this organisation as well. The need to sort of look at the HR implications around moving people and dealing with some of those as well, because change can be difficult for some. But we're needing to make sure that we were addressing our own capability and capacity within this organisation. What's happened today, 3rd of July today, we have now moved into our new structures following all of that consultation. And what I've done is consolidated all of the different parts of the organisation that was responsible for capital delivery into one team. That is headed up by Graham Jones. So we now have within that structure, metro delivery, rail delivery, and then what we're calling sustainable transport, which covers all the delivery on the highway space. So active travel, bus lanes, sprint, for example, as well. And then to support that is a portfolio office, which is managing the performance management of that, as well as a technical unit, which is looking at some of the more technical skills that we need to have. So things like contract management, utilities management, all the things that bring risk into capital delivery as well. We've moved into that new structure today. We also have a lot of reliance on the contractors and consultants within the structures, and we're looking at how we can make sure that we've got a longer term staffing structure and succession planning, and the opportunity for us also to bring in new talent with apprenticeships and graduate placements as well within the organisation, so that we can create a steady flow of people coming in and supporting the broader delivery here as well. The next step obviously would be to work with our local authority colleagues to make sure that we're supporting activities that happen within the local authority as well. The City Regions Sustainable Transport Settlement has given us the opportunity to be rather than funding based in terms of those delivery, actually we're able to grow a delivery team which will look at that long-term funding. And of course we saw in the Chancellor's announcements around the budget earlier in the year that another 5-year period of CRSTS will also mean that we'll have a 10-year programme in effect, and we can expect to have a similar amount of funding in that next 5-year period as well. So that's what we've been doing. We've moved into those structures, and that will also give us better controls around the cost of capital projects where we see some delays, making sure that we are truly working in partnership where we have reliance on local authorities or Network Rail or other organisations as well, who we have to get approvals from as part of that to make sure that we've got a good grip on those things as well. So that's been some months in the making, if not probably 12 months actually. We started this work just after Commonwealth Games finished to make sure that we were moving the teams around. And obviously today is where the teams have moved into those new structures, but of course it will be an evolving piece of work as we build the team strength, capacity, capability. And that also means that for this committee, we will have one set of reporting information on capital delivery as well, in a format which hopefully we can agree with you, something that we were trying to do in the previous guise of this through Transport Delivery Committee. And that will help us make sure that you've got then good oversight of what happens on all capital projects that are delivered by Transport for West Midlands, but also delivered by the local authorities as well. So any questions on that basis, but that's what we're doing as part of that.
If I may then, Anne, later on item 11, we're appointing champions and makes. Can you explain the relationship with those organisations and how that actually works in terms of governance?
So the member engagement groups will still function the same way. So we're looking at rail-based projects, whether it's operational or the capital side of things as well. It will be able where you can do sort of deeper dives into some of either a delivery project or the operation of certain things as well. And then the MEGs will be able to report back into this committee on what they've heard or what they've understood, what they've questioned, and how you've supported us in making some of the changes that we might need to make as well. So that's going to be really important to make sure that those member engagement groups and the scrutiny champions are able to sort of work with us on that basis. I've only described TFW Reimagined as what we've done to change the way we do the capital delivery, but of course there's still lots of other things which Pete mentioned earlier that we do in TFWM in terms of strategically operating a network, working with bus and train and the tram operator as well to make sure that we've got the levels of service that we need for our residents. And of course the member engagement groups will also be able to get into more detailed discussions and detailed information around those as well. And then there are other things you've got, Darren is on the call for, or on the meeting later around road safety, but there's lots of other things that we do within TFWM that member engagement groups will be able to get into in a bit more detail and then be reporting into this committee.
Good. Any questions? Carol?
I love the detail of what you shared. Please could you share it, give it to us as a written report so that I can reflect on it and have a look, because it has implications not just for the MEGs, but it will have implications on reporting back to the committee as well. That would be great, thank you.
I'm happy to do that. I think we were taken a bit by surprise with this meeting happening so soon after the CA and the terms of reference changing. So all future reports shouldn't really be verbal on this. We will make sure that we've got written reports, but I can certainly put something in writing to say what we're doing with what each department within TFWM does as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if there's anyone taken into account. We've got a lot of new members this year around the table. A lot of them have come along here, not like I've been knocking about for years. That took on a new task and wonder what it's all about. Any type of training have you got in program lined up so to help people in the system in what they were doing down here, rather than have 12 months picking up how it ticks over. Some training sessions may go down quite well for new members and of course for the old members as well.
Yeah, us olders could do with it as well.
Yes, we will be looking at putting on some training sessions during the course of the year. We're also looking at getting some external training put on for members as well. So that will be provided throughout the year.
Thank you.
Could we get an indication from members of the areas that they wish to consider? Okay, and their availability, because I think that's an important question that needs to be responded to quickly so that we've got a fair appreciation of what's going on. Councillor Alden.
Thank you. And I think you, since I indicated you actually did give us commitment, but just to reiterate, I think it's an important one, making sure that going forward after this meeting, reports are written reports as well as just verbal ones, because we need to make sure that members have got that detail and can give it due consideration in advance.
Yeah, I've given the instruction no verbal updates to this committee. It all has to be written, so yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Chair.
Can you just clarify the meetings that will be for the new members and the existing member? Would those be in teams or out or hybrid?
The question is teams, hybrid or in person. I think for training purposes, it's probably best if we were in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be very happy to take that forward for training in person. And for committee meetings, ideally, because of the quorum, it has to be quorum, so members will need to be in the room. Yes.
Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, the member engagement groups are a fairly clean sheet each year. It'd be useful for the existing and the new members to have a focus on the training for that. Okay. Good. Huxtable, Councillor Huxtable. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm just picking up on that point, and I don't know whether you want to deal with it now, Chair, or later under item 11. But Lindsay talked about meeting in person or meeting online, and I would put forward the suggestion that in terms of MEGs, it could be hybrid. So dependent on whoever the chair is, they could decide whether to hold it entirely online or as a hybrid meeting.
We'll pick that up on item 11, but point noted. Is there anybody else that wishes to raise a question, make a comment on this item? I see none. Thank you very much. Moving on then, we're into scrutiny within the Combined Authority.
Thank you, Chair. It's back to myself, and we thought we would bring this item to the committee because it's your first meeting. There are some returning members, but there are some new members as well, and it's an amalgamation of the former Transport Delivery Committee and the former Transport Scrutiny Committee. So hopefully members old and new will welcome just 15 minutes or so on scrutiny within the Combined Authority and just sort of setting the scene at the start of your year. So I have a presentation and some slides with apologies to these three councillors. It's going to be on the screen behind you, so you may want to move. But what I will do is circulate these slides to all members after the meeting. So you will have a full set of slides in your inbox later today. So first of all, an introduction for the Combined Authority and introduction on scrutiny, and a lot of members who are members of scrutiny committees within your own authorities, this will be familiar, and we will highlight where it's familiar and also some of the differences. But just to be clear, overview and scrutiny is a statutory function of the Combined Authority. So when it was established, the government mandated overview and scrutiny. So this isn't a voluntary add-on. This is something that we have to do and are required to do under the regulations that set us up back in 2016 and continue to apply. So we have two scrutiny committees. There's this one, Transport Delivery Scrutiny, which, as the name suggests, focuses on transport and TFWM function. The other scrutiny committee, which is just called Overview and Scrutiny, looks at all other services and functions of the Combined Authority. So there's the two committees really in reflection of the size of the transport agenda, really, given the amount of money spent and the really important remit. So transport has its own scrutiny committee, and the other one covers all other issues. And as I said in that this slide here, so its role is to provide that challenge and oversight to the work not only of the mayor but also of the other Combined Authority committees, the portfolio lead officers, and in this case, officers of Transport for West Midlands as well. So we talk about overview and scrutiny committee, and there is a subtle difference, perhaps worth just flagging. That overview, if you think about that as taking place in the earlier stages of policy development, so long before a report ends up at the Combined Authority board, or we may have previously seen it on other committees in a draft stage, Overview looks at that very early stage of policy development and gives members an opportunity to input really before any words are written. Scrutiny, by contrast, looks at decisions that are about to be made or have just been made. So that's very much looking at reports that are about to go on to the main board. You have an option of calling in decisions, which I'll talk about later. But if you think overview is very early in the process, scrutiny is at the time of a decision or subsequent to that decision being made. So just a look at how we do that, and at the top of the slide is a very sort of simple timeline of how scrutiny will work. It will identify matters of concern to members. You will become informed of the relevant issues relating to that matter. So there's a strong focus on training, as we've heard earlier. You will then help shape policy decisions, principally by making recommendations to the actual decision makers. So to be absolutely clear, and I know as members you will know this, but the Scrutiny Committee doesn't have any powers of decision making, but it can certainly and absolutely should make recommendations to the Combined Authority Board, who does make decisions in respect of transport, where you feel that is appropriate. Again, some other terminology that you will hear during the course of the year that we use in the scrutiny world, and it's helpful to be familiar with these. Pre-development is that very early stage, so considering policies and proposals that for the purposes of shaping their development and drafting them, as I said there, in early development. Differentiates from pre-decision, so the pre-decision happens much closer to the decision making, and you will be involved in both pre-development and pre-decision scrutiny. There's then deep dives and topic-based reviews. So as Anna's mentioned around the MEGs, the real opportunity to get into the teeth of an issue that perhaps just this type of committee just doesn't allow enough time to consider. So you will have your MEGs to do deep dives and other, say, topic-based reviews. And calling, you'll be familiar if you're a scrutiny member on your own authority that you can call in decisions at a local authority in the case of the executive. In our case, in the instances of the Combined Authority and following Combined Authority boards, my team will contact you and with a summary of the decisions, and you can call those in if you deem there is reason for that. And there's obviously a lot of governance around that, and to stop anything being frivolous and the system being abused. But if there's a clear sense from members of the committee that an item requires further consideration, you can call that in. The implementation of the decision is paused. And critically, you have two options. We'll have a special meeting, and you will consider that item. You can either refer it back to the Combined Authority Board for further consideration, setting out your reasons why you think the decision was flawed in some reason, or you could on further reflection agree that the correct decision was made, and then it gets ratified. But that's a really important power to be used appropriately but necessarily when required. And then the final point about the scrutiny is around the implementation, performance, and impact of the policies. So this is obviously the post-decision scrutiny. So when the Combined Authority has made decisions, and this can be, you can be reviewing things a year or more after the decision's been made. That what was its effect? Did it achieve what it set out to do? And there's a lot there in that post-decision scrutiny. So I said we do things perhaps sometimes a little bit different from a local authority scrutiny, and that's what this slide is for. So if I just take you through three examples, and this actually was a piece of work that the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny pulled together when it looked at combined authorities as they were developing. And it clearly identified that local authority, there are strategic matters, but there's very much a stronger operational delivery role at a local authority, and so a lot of scrutiny is on operational delivery, whereas with the Combined Authority, recognising obviously the delivery responsibilities of transport, but across the wider piece, it tends to be more strategic. So you're looking at the long-term impact of Combined Authority decisions that, as the slide says, sometimes say 10 years plus. But interestingly, for this committee, you will have that mix of the longer term strategic with the operational oversight of transport. Second line on there is around partnerships, and as we've said with combined authorities, partnerships is fundamental to almost everything the combined authority does. So a lot more of your scrutiny will involve the impact on partners and the role of partners, and whether that transport is with the operators themselves or passenger representative groups. I think there'll be a lot more focus on the partnership aspect than there perhaps will be with a local authority maybe delivering services more directly. And then the bottom point is really just to flag the issue around devolution deals, and of course there's one very much being developed at the moment, which is termed the deeper devolution deal. But a lot of the functions and responsibilities of combined authorities are driven by the devolution deals that it makes with government, and again, it's worth remembering that whereas in a local authority their powers are the same, all combined authorities are essentially different in that the powers and the responsibilities of each combined authority is determined by the individual deals and agreements it reaches with government. So it's always worth bearing that in mind when you're comparing other combined authorities, because it's not always comparing with the line. But certainly as the new devolution deal, if that gets agreed later on in the year, that will drive, I think, the agenda of what the combined authority is doing, and consequently drive the scrutiny agenda that you want to be looking at. This slide we've called characteristics of scrutiny. So this is a kind of a culture slide, and what we want to do with scrutiny. And as I said, the top scrutiny is fundamental to the governance and decision-making process of the combined authority. And in the devolution deal that I referenced, that was announced earlier this year, the government very clearly said that with extra powers and responsibilities, there must be extra accountability and oversight, and views your committee and the other scrutiny committee very much leading that. So absolutely, you've got a key role in the combined authority's governance, and then we've got these sort of four boxes there around the scrutiny should be constructive, so you're a critical friend to the combined authority board, and your challenge to the decision makers. That's important, and certainly collaborative, so working with the combined authority to develop strategies, policies and proposals. So you're seeking to make things better than they would otherwise be, I think is a nice way to frame that. Evidence-based scrutiny, of course, it should be, the work you do should be based on facts and evidence, and training. Again, we come back to, and the information that you're provided with as members is really important with that. And if you're being asked to make decisions based on evidence that you don't know, then you must absolutely call that out, and to be productive as well. So you can't scrutinise everything, and you won't literally have time and enough meetings to do that. So I think it's really important to focus on where you can have the biggest impact, and what are, amongst everything that you might be able to scrutinise, where is it that you're going to be most effective. And so this comes on to work planning and programming, because you're going to have to prioritise what you look at, and filter what you look at. And as I said previously, you can't look at everything. It's just not possible. So what you do and when you do it is going to be really important. And later on in the agenda, there's a draft work programme which, we recognise at this stage needs a lot of fleshing out, and we will want to know your views as members as to what you want to be looking at. But just some of the questions that you may want to sort of reflect over the coming weeks when you're considering your work programme is what would the benefit of doing scrutiny in this area bring? So, let's not do anything for the sake of doing it, but what actually would be the benefit out of it? How best you might be able to do that. And we're all sat around a committee table now, and the next slide looks at how you might do it, and there are a number of different ways to do that. Again, best outcomes. What are you seeking to achieve? What could you do to make things better? And then the final bullet point is recognising the partnership role and how can you involve the decision makers, whether that's your own local authorities who are also interested in the particular matter being scrutinised, partners, operators, for example, passenger groups. How might you choose to involve them in that work as well? So they're just things for you to think about and questions to ask yourself as you're developing your work programme. And then this one is about these different ways. So there's there are these committees which are scheduled and in your diaries for the year, but we just want to get you to think about other ways. And Lindsay, who's our scrutiny officer, is just going to take us through some of the different ways, because Lindsay is the scrutiny officer for the Combined Authority. We're working closely with you, and this is where she will interact with you most. So Lindsay, if you want to take that one.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, so as Dan mentioned, scrutiny can be undertaken in a number of ways. So your work programme is a rolling work programme, so items will be added during the course of the year. So you will have your formal sessions, which are the committee sessions, and also informal sessions. This is where I believe the softer scrutiny can take place, where you can have that influence. So you'll have your regular scheduled agenda items, scrutinising the operational performance, the capital delivery, and the policy direction of TFWM. Single special scrutiny meetings to consider particular items of interest. Q&A sessions. This has been embedded really well, I think, within the main overview and scrutiny committee. So you can have Q&A sessions with the mayor, with the portfolio lead member for transport, statutory officers, and also partners. Informal briefing sessions, which I believe the previous Transport Delivery Committee found these useful prior to committee meetings to help inform lines of inquiries. Scrutiny champions, so scrutiny champions and the MEGs can be commissioned to go away and do a piece of work, a piece of research, again, and bring in their findings back to the formal committee. Deep dives, again, looking at a particular issue to get to the bottom of it. And I would say a really good example of this at the moment, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has recently undertaken a deep dive into the adult education budget and looking at the impact of that since it's been devolved to the Combined Authority. So what difference has that made? And they've come up with a number of recommendations which will then go forward to the Skills Advisory Board. Public engagement sessions. So holding engagement sessions with members of the public, again, to help inform your lines of inquiry, to collect evidence, to help you build your questions. Speaking and inviting external witnesses to meetings, again, to help build that evidence base. So in summary, I would say there's lots of different ways that you can undertake scrutiny, and scrutiny can happen outside of the formal committee meetings and then formally report back the findings and recommendations to the formal meeting. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thanks for that. That's all we were going to say. So it's just a brief introduction to scrutiny. I'll circulate the slides so you've got that, and happy to have conversations offline individually with members if that is useful. Other than if anyone's got any questions now, happy to answer those.
Any questions, any comments? Let me kick off. The use of social media in terms of engaging with the public, I think would be quite important. How do you do it? And how can we be involved as members?
So the Combined Authority has its social media channels, and TFWM does as well. I don't know if Anne wants to comment, but yeah, as something for members to understand more and look to see, absolutely. But I'll let Anne explain what happens at the moment.
We have using all the different social media channels, but some of them are a bit more detailed dependent on what the topic is. We use them to sort of engage with the public around projects that are being delivered, capital projects or initiatives like you'll hear, for example, on the road safety later. We produce a sort of a rolling annual plan of social media activity. And we probably could build something in around this committee and what it does, what things that you are getting involved with, and put a bit of a media plan, if you like, around this committee as well, that we can use all of our different social media channels on, if that would be of benefit. So I can take that away and investigate it, I think, Dan.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any other comments? Clear. Any other questions? Any other comments? Clearly, this is using TDOS to best effect. It's showing its importance within the combined authority and making the combined authority accountable, which I think is extremely important. I think what we've got to do as constituent parts of the region is to ensure that the work of this committee, the work of combined authority itself, goes back to the ranch, and we make our councils aware of the work that is going on to ensure that we get feedback from the local authorities as well. I think that's extremely important. So are there any other questions? Are there? Councillor Huxtable.
Thanks.
Sorry, my fault.
No, thank you very much. Entirely agree with what you say, but would amplify it and say it's also important for non-constituent authorities, because as we all know, journeys start off outside the West Midlands Combined Authority but finish within the Combined Authority. So it's working with non-constituent authorities that surround the West Midlands, which is why we have Councillor Marshall here, to make sure that everyone benefits, not just those within the West Midlands Combined Authority. Thank you.
I think that's a very fair point, and I will ask that in the future we have the membership that includes those constituent authorities, so we can actually say hello to people as well. Okay. Yep. All right. Yes, please.
Yeah, our front door at the moment for complaints and compliments is mainly Twitter or telephone. Can we make it a little bit broader? Because a lot of people don't really like Twitter. And they'd like to be able to email us, which is okay, broader, if you can have a picture more easily, that kind of thing.
It's a fair request, and I think we'll take that on board to ensure that we are aware of all social medias. I mean, I'm still getting used to Facebook, but there's lots of other things, Instagram, etc. So I'm sure we use all of those medias. Okay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would Mr. Essex like to elaborate a little bit more on the system of any callings and how we deal with them?
I will, yes. So when the Combined Authority Board makes a decision relating to transport, which that is the meeting that has responsibility for transport related decisions, when they've made a decision, immediately after, within a day or so of that meeting, what we call a summary of decisions will be sent around all the members of the committee, of your committee, setting out what that decision was, so you're aware of it. Our constitution then says if 5 members representing 5 different constituent authorities request that the item be called in, and they have a week to do that, then the item is called in. So I say it's a reasonable threshold, and it's designed to ensure that there genuinely is cross-regional and effectively cross-party support for that. But 5 members, each from a different constituent authority, if they call it in, decision gets frozen, it's not implemented. We'll then hold a special meeting of this committee within 2 weeks, where you will receive the report. Officers will come along, the portfolio lead for transport will come along. The report will be explained, the decision will be explained, the reason for that will be explained. You'll be able to ask questions, and then as a committee you must reach one of 2 conclusions. One is that, having heard the matter for yourself, you're happy with the decision the Combined Authority Board made, in which case the decision gets implemented. or you could, if you're not happy, you can refer it back to the next meeting of the Combined Authority Board, and they will be required to consider it again, which you will then submit at the same time your observations and reasoning for why it was referred back. And then that board must consider the report again, consider your comments and reach a conclusion. So that's how it works. To say it's designed for important issues where there are important matters to consider. So it's not to be undertaken lightly. And credit to scrutiny members in previous years, it hasn't been abused. It's been, we have had items called in and they have been deemed to be appropriate and not frivolous in any way. So that's the process, but you'll get notified after every board of the transport decisions with a request. If you as a member you want to call that in, then how to do it.
Thank you. I'm very happy with that. Thank you.
Let me ask a question then, Dan. On matters of urgency by the Combined Authority, clearly they would be time related. What process is there to ensure that those decisions are able to be taken forward by the Combined Authority and not delay?
So where a decision is coming before the main board and it is a matter of urgency, prior to the board meeting itself, it needs to have been identified as a matter of urgency. And in those instances where the item has been prior to the meeting identified as a matter of urgency, the chair of this committee must be consulted with, and they must agree that they, having considered why it's been suggested is urgent, they agree with that reason. If the chair of this committee agrees with that, call in won't apply. But there is that caveat that the call-in won't apply only if the chair of this committee, prior to the main board, has agreed that the reason for urgency is indeed legitimate and necessarily urgent.
Presumably the chair would report back to committee as to the reasons why.
I mean, if this situation hasn't occurred yet, but were it to, then absolutely, as an authority, we would be letting you as members know beforehand, so it wouldn't be sprung on you as an after event.
Thank you, Chair. One of the roles of scrutiny is to have a weather eye out for the progress of things that are being delivered. And if you're going to measure progress, you want things to be benchmarked. You want to have key performance indicators. You want time limited key performance indicators. Can we make sure that those things are in place for the proposals that are in front of us? I'd like to see more risk registers as well. Risk registers, not just financial ones, but also related to the progress of projects that are, that we are asked to look at. So, if we're to be effective in our role in scrutiny, then the Combined Authority will have to give us the tools in order to do that, which means benchmarking key performance indicators, time limited key performance indicators. Thank you.
Yeah, so that there are key performance indicators, particularly associated with the sort of broad policies of the Combined Authority. So, for example, when Darren talks about road safety, he'll tell you what the key performance indicator is that we're aspiring to within that as well. So you're right, it should be in each of the reports, it should say what the policy has said. So you can benchmark it as well. The policy decisions, so we're going through the process at the moment of refreshing the local transport plan, and that has a whole new set of key performance indicators around things like decarbonisation, the amount of journeys made by public transport and so on. So yes, absolutely, they should be in there. They do already exist, but probably not in one sort of simple sheet, if you like. And that's something that we could pull together just so that you've got those as an aid. The other thing, which is on the delivery, the capital delivery programme, I mentioned it earlier when I said with some of the changes that we are making, is that there'll be performance dashboards against the capital programme. So monitoring the spend is one thing, in terms of what we forecast would be spent by each project by what date, but then also what are the key milestones within those projects in terms of critical path and so on, and any sort of change that need to be done in terms of rebaselining
on the capital delivery side as well. So they're the things that we're designing up in terms of making sure that you've got more informative dashboards going forward so that you can monitor the performance. And that will include things like risk registers as well at the appropriate level for here. But of course, risk registers and other things are also taken to other committees. So the Risk and Assurance Committee, for example, as well.
Thank you. Okay, can I ask, with respect to dashboards, has the Combined Authority thought of a carbon footprint dashboard? I know it's something that Wolverhampton Council is thinking about doing.
So in the new delivery directorate within TFWM, we've actually introduced a carbon specialism as well, so that we can monitor carbon reduction as part of our delivery programme on the capital side. More broadly for the Combined Authority, there are some targets around decarbonisation that are being developed as well. So it's something that it's really hard to measure as well. So
I understand scope 1, scope 2. I understand the measuring of it, but it should be possible within transport to have some idea and some measured progress towards a net zero target. And I know you're saying that they're there, but I mean, you go on the website, and you know, if I click on Wolverhampton, what's happening in your area, it'll say there are several projects in Wolverhampton, and there's no detail and there's no specifics. And really, what I'm looking for is things that are more visible, like you said, which would be brilliant, and things that are easily accessible. Thank you.
Councillor Hoxton.
Thank you very much, Chair. With regard to the point that was just made, would that not be an ideal topic for the relevant MEG to explore?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Short answer is yes. Absolutely, that was my thinking. So we'll take it in into the MEG. I see no other hands going up. So something else I failed to do as acting chair is inform committee of, sadly, the passing of the leader of Wolverhampton City Council, Councillor Brookfield. Councillor Brookfield died on Sunday after a fearless battle with cancer, following a diagnosis earlier this year.
Can I say, please?
Let me finish.
Councillors in Wolverhampton don't know this.
On behalf of everyone at TDOS and indeed the Combined Authority, I would say we extend our heartfelt condolences to his family at this difficult time. And I think it would be appropriate. Ian was a great friend for transport that we show our respects and stand. Thank you very much. Councillor Hyatt, you wish to make comment?
I'm aware that this is a public meeting, and the councillors of Wolverhampton themselves haven't been given this information yet. So
My information, it was a press release from Wolverhampton, so your colleagues will be aware.
Is the press release released today?
Yes.
I was going to request if it hadn't been released today, if the press that were present wouldn't do it, but since it has been released as a press release, that's absolutely fine, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the financial monitoring report. Kate Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. You have in front of you the financial monitoring report, which is in the guise in which the Transport Delivery Committee would have seen the report previously, so it fulfills the duty of monitoring the in-year financial performance, both revenue and capital of Transport for West Midlands. This is the first report of this new financial year, for the 23-24 financial year, and it updates on the position as at the end of May. So the revenue budget, year to date, we have a favourable variance of 0.6 million. That is largely driven by underperformance on the concessions budget due to lower patronage, but also some vacancies within the TFWM staffing cohort as well, driving those. On the capital programme, we are currently showing a favourable variance of 0.7 on the WMCA delivered schemes and an adverse variance of 0.1 for those schemes that are being delivered by partners in there. Detail on those schemes, there is some detail further down where we have got some, I guess, overspends on the year-to-date position only. I use the word overspend very, very carefully there. That is where work has been accelerated, and we have comfort that the full project costs remain within the overall budget allocation. Those are largely around the rail projects and a couple of the metro projects within there. There is full detail of the schemes within the appendix of the report. And it's the early part of the year, I think it would be fair to say, in there. So there isn't too much to report from a financial perspective on the in-year at this point in time. But happy to take any questions from councillors.
Okay, are there any questions, any comments? I see none. Report noted. Agreed. Thank you. Item 9, bus funding update. Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Just to reiterate, may I reiterate also on behalf of Transport for West Midlands Combined Authority, our agreement in the comments by the Chair for the leader of Wolverhampton. So just in terms of the item ahead of us, we've talked today about verbal updates, and the purpose of the verbal update today is to provide the latest position around funding for bus services, and we will be in a position to share a note with all members of the committee over the course of the next 24 hours around this, but I just wanted to give an overview of where we are at. I'm also conscious for this committee today there's some members who haven't been party to recent bus funding updates that we provided over the course of the last municipal year. So forgive me, I'll try and give an overview that certainly doesn't go into detail, but gives some understanding and the basis of that for members who are new to the arena. Government support for bus services in the region has been in place since March 2020. And that has been in place to support all bus services across England. And that support generally has been directly from government to bus operators through special grants, first known as CBSSG, that's the COVID bus service support grant, but then there's been successor grants. So the funding has gone directly between government and operators. That has continued until just last week, when the existing funding came to an end in those grant agreements as we knew them. And some funds during that time have passed directly to operators. Some have also gone between government and Transport for West Midlands because we have had some devolved funding arrangements. Alongside that, direct support to existing bus services, the government also provided money through something known as Bus Service Improvement Plans, BSIP, where they allocated money for the transformation of bus services to support the National Bus Strategy, which many members may recall was launched here in the West Midlands, in Coventry, in 2021 by the then Prime Minister. TFWM was successful in being allocated £88 million of that BSIP funding over the course of 3 years, which was one of the highest settlements for transformation. And this was allocated to achieve the objectives set out within our regional BSIP, which was evaluated and agreed by the government. From July the 1st, because recovery grants have ended, government have moved to 2 new funds. And these funds are known as, forgive my acronistic update, but BSIP Plus and BSOG Plus. That won't mean a lot to a lot of people, I understand that, and apologies for using the acronyms. But the West Midlands will not qualify for what is known as BSIP Plus because we already have BSIP funding. But BSOG Plus, the other new acronym, will be eligible for our bus operators in this region. and will provide some additional funding. But it is a lot lower than the existing level of funding that has been coming through the national groups. So this has led operators to advise Transport for West Midlands that because of the shortfall in funding, that's put a large swathe of services and routes at risk in the region because they are not deemed to be commercially viable by our commercial bus operators. And that was something strongly reflected from our bus operators, including National Express, who carry most of the passengers in this region. We still, as a region, have around 90% of the bus services that we had before COVID. And that compares favourably to a lot of other English networks outside of London, where typically, just as an example for members, around 80 to 85% could be seen as the amount that are still carried in lots of those English towns and city regions. But that's not a definite for those locations. At the same time as that, the government has now stated that we no longer have to preserve the BSIP funding for transformational outcomes associated with the government's national bus strategy, but we can now repurpose that funding to support existing bus services. So therefore, in addition to this B surplus, we can repurpose some of our funds. In response to this, Transport for West Midlands has renewed proposals within the bus service improvement plan, and subject to the governance process, intends to make some adjustments. A summary of those are about reducing the amount of money paid to bus operators for the fares freeze, which has been in place since April 2022. National Express has, and this has been a matter of public record recently, revised its prices and put them up from today. Reducing the amount of money for transformational bus services and ticketing incentives by around 29 million to repurpose some of the funds, and agreeing a local grant fund for operators in order that we can retain around 88% of the pre-COVID network up to December 2024. And that's utilising a combination of the BSIP funding repurposed and the newly devolved BSIP Plus that I mentioned before. All of this is subject to approval from the Department for Transport, which is currently with them and we're seeking. It will then be subject to agreement for the bus operators and local authorities that you are all represented by through the enhanced partnership governance. And it will also be subject to something called the subsidy control process, which is the replacement for state aid, which will take us 2 to 3 months to work through and conclude. In terms of fares, whilst we note the commercial fares increases, which are always disappointing, there are some mitigations through the work that TfWM have been doing to require operators to simplify their tickets through what we are calling the bonfire bus tickets, therefore allowing access for one ticket to all bus operators. The market conditions remain challenging for our commercial bus operators, which we recognise. The potential decisions we face could have resulted in the decimation of many bus services and routes across the region. So this approach has been taken to do as much as we can to protect the network whilst evaluate the future funding opportunities and policy opportunities for the network from 2025 onwards. So we have also, it's just worth noting, tried to ensure that we can maintain as much transformation as we can from the BSIP. There is still the funding for the extra policing, for the customer charter, for the ticketing incentives programme, for the ticketing integration, and for introducing a process to agree future fares rises through the enhanced partnership, so a mechanism that's taken away from the bus operators and put into the partnership. So hopefully that gives you an overview of where we've got to. A lot of that, Chair, has been being concluded in the last few working days. So hence the verbal update, but we will provide a written note on that over the course of the next 24 hours. And we're happy to pick up any questions or comments.
You've anticipated. Who's on? Could you turn your mic off? Thank you very much. You've anticipated the question as chair in terms of, because I note on the agenda, we've got 4 verbal items, which I would believe is unusual, because I think committee would very much prefer reports coming before them so they can, and relevant links to ensure that we can do our reading, our research before we come to committee. Okay, so I saw hands go up. Yep.
I think the vice
Yeah,
chairman.
I
will
will
be
do.
for me.
Okay.
The vice chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Right. I think sometimes we're just coming on over to the edge of the cliff every time, Pete. You get a little bit and it goes for so long this time in October. I feel passengers, the people that use the buses should be the ones that be consulted. I did a report for that when I went to Erdington about with a meeting with passengers. I also want to mention drivers. How is it going with drivers now? Because we need more drivers and everything. You know, more little jobs fair. And also, what can we do regarding the bonfire of the bus tickets? Because surely we can do our bit as well to promote it.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the consultation, it's absolutely right and proper, and a point that we've been making throughout COVID is that because often the funding agreements that we've been negotiating, be it through government or with bus operators, have been coming so last minute that's not left any time within the process for us to engage with customers. We're simply going through a process of reviewing registrations from operators. In terms of this negotiation, what we have agreed with operators, if any changes that are forthcoming, potentially since October, but more minor changes, then we will undertake a review of those in advance so that we can identify where we need to consult and communicate with customers or passenger groups and indeed influence the outcome. In terms of the driver recruitment, I am pleased to say that particularly with National Express, driver recruitment has improved significantly. That has partly been on back of the following the industrial election and the pay review as well. That's not been the same across all operators, so we are monitoring that situation very closely. It's currently anticipated that by around September, we'll be up to around the driver recruitment number that is needed, particularly for National Express. And in terms of the bonfire of bus tickets, you are absolutely right. There is a massive piece of work that needs to be undertaken there. What's been happening over the last couple of weeks is trying to identify whether all operators are in, because actually with this funding risk proposal, what happened was some operators looked to maybe not be part of it. So actually being clear on what we can and can't promote and market. But through my colleague, Matt Lewis, we will be bringing forward a full comms and communication campaign, which we'll also share with committee to ensure that we are clear on what can be promoted and how we make sure that our customers know about what is available.
Could it be we work for the next, like the passenger first or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can even share all the detail of that within the committee as well.
Yeah. Agreed, it should go to the bank, but I think all members need to be involved in that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just refer back to my journey here this morning on the 27th, which is operated by Diamond. The service is running late because the driver taking the fares. A lot of people use it and they still pay cash. They normally pay or were paying £3.20 for a day ticket. When they got on the bus, they were asked for £4.50, which is 50% more than what they're normally paying. So you can imagine people there with hands in the pocket to get it purchased out, trying to find the extra revenue. And then they wanted to use in the single ticket and now being charged £2.70 even for a very short hop of a few stops, if I may put it to you like that. I thought we were sitting around this table to actually get people to use the buses and actually get seats on bums. This is the biggest thing we can possibly do to deter people from using it. The other difficulty I've got is we look at the figures where the passenger is down, and this is simply brought about by the fact that reliability isn't like it used to be. And people stand off and now the bus to turn it up and they say, I'm going to bother no more. Now, we need to get people back on the buses, paying fares, using buses, but all we seem to be doing at the present moment is putting this business of deterring people from actually using buses. And when I heard terminology by one lady this morning, why has it gone up 50%? So it does rather concern me. I know we all have to make a living, etc., but they are huge increases. Now, I'll come to the point of raising all this, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and that is, Why did people not know about it first? Because it wasn't advertised, there wasn't not any notice put up anybody's at all telling them about a possible price increase. The publicity of this has been absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, thank you, councillor, for all of those points. In terms of the fares operated on Diamond Bus, our understanding as of the conversations with both government and operators on Friday afternoon were that all of our major operators, including Diamond, were now going to participate in the £2 capped bus fare scheme. So if that is not the case, we'll check out immediately after this if that isn't the case, because yeah, well, that shouldn't be the case. The revised fare is £2.70 single, but under the involvement in the £2 cap scheme, they should be selling £2 tickets, not £2.70 tickets. So I'll ensure the team investigate that immediately after this one. In terms of the day ticket, then although the regional day ticket's gone from £4 to £4.50, we are mindful that actually under the operator proposals that I think the low fare zone ticket that was eligible in one or two particular pockets of areas has since been taken out of the network arrangement. So for those customers involved in those tickets, that is a significant uplift where that ticket isn't available. What we are trying to negotiate with those operators is that through the Swift product, we can still provide that low fare zone ticket in specific places. So we will keep you posted around that one as well. In terms of reliability, a really key point, we've seen reliability and performance issues associated, and that has been going on since through driver shortage issues and other times. We are now monitoring that on a route by route basis with the operators across the region on a weekly basis to try and ensure that there is a more robust response going into that from each individual operator. We are also trying to work through the programme that we've got through CRSTS for investing in more highway improvements to try and improve the sustainability and support bus services as well. But obviously they are longer term to deliver the outcomes. In the short term, we need to make sure they're up to 100% allocation of drivers and services, and that we are communicating with customers where there is any intention for those services not to operate as well. And we do need to be getting to the point where we can promote a positive message around the future of the bus services in the region. I completely agree. And through the bus service improvement plan, we are trying to ensure through the customer charter that we've got that agreement with operators as well.
Mr. Chairman, can I just very quickly come back? Yes, I fully understand it was introduced by the managing director of National Express some years ago, and the ticket we had locally was called the Dudley and Sandwell one. And that was the one that was the £3 one, which is done up by the 50%, because that doesn't, as Mr. Bond has explained, doesn't exist anymore. And the short off ones as well, you know, to me, it's a little unfair to charge a single fare for the short off, which I used to pay before.
Thank you for raising that matter. I'm sure there will be an effective investigation to get things on track for tomorrow morning.
Be in touch with the company this afternoon.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to first say, coming from Worcestershire, I think well done actually to Transport West Midlands in getting a successful bid for the bus lending. Obviously, Worcestershire was one of the many more rural counties which weren't successful, not bitter. But what we would have been looking at in order to see how we can help over in Worcestershire is we can get a trial for demand responsive transport utilising much better apps, and I'm aware that you've been doing very similar in a Solihull trial with Bolsall, Common to Birkswell. Would it be an idea to get the County Council and Transport West Midlands to talk about their best practice, the findings, to see if there's any way we can make sure that the scheme, such as demand responsive transport, can be a big success? Because from my mind, it seems that the reliability issue can be solved by utilising this technology.
Thank you, councillor, and we'd be delighted to share in that both knowledge exchange and work through with that. And we have similarly set up a process the same as that with Warwickshire just in the last couple of weeks as well to evaluate there. So maybe we could look at doing that more to try to even further such exist. But yes, Indeed, and if we've got the right people to contact, I'll make sure that we do that.
Yeah, continue. Yep. Good. Councillor Ward.
I thought I heard you say, Pete, that National Express are putting their prices up. Well, I read a few weeks ago that they had decided actually to participate in the government's single fare cap at £2. So presumably this is other fares that they are increasing whilst holding down the single fare to £2 until the end of October. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So if you imagine that under the existing single fare was £2.40, under their fares increase would go to £2.70. So if there was no fares cap, but ultimately the fares cap is still in place to bring that down from government to £2 at this current point in time. So providing they remain a party to that scheme, and we had discussions with both them and government last week to ensure that they were going to remain a party to the scheme, then from a customer perspective, it is £2 for the single ticket. But from a fares perspective that sits behind it, what they're negotiating between them and government is the difference between that and the £2.70 now, as opposed to that and the £2.40.
Ian. Councillor Hyatt.
My question was this, not much similar from Ian's, and that this is me being a way really by increasing the fare and then going to government and asking for the difference for bus companies to increase their revenue. I wondered if it was.
So on the surface of it, I could absolutely understand that perspective. And I'm sure there is some, we are not a part directly of the negotiations. They have been up till to date directly between government and operators. However, because we have devolved funding, then we have been, if you like, allowed in the room on this one with government discussions. The metrics that the government are using aren't straightforward replace. So there are other metrics within there about growth, around usage, around what extra demand it's creating. So they don't naturally just get the added value of the 40p or 70 pence different. It is actually quite condensed from that. But I would imagine the outcome of it is going to be a slightly higher rate from government. Original. I can't give you the exact metrics because we're not party to them.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the same point, I got a tram from Wolverhampton this morning and told the price has gone up. That and the bus. A lot of people didn't know about it. So that's the ticket for tram with bus. So obviously the tram fares have stayed the same, but the ticket where you can use it on a tram and a bus has increased because of the increases on National Express's prices as well. So there has been some adjustment there. On the matter around communication, National Express have communicated to all of their customers about the price rises, as has Midland Metro. I appreciate that not everybody pays attention to some of the communication, so social media is being used to do that, as well as information at stops and other things as well, particularly on the tram network. So that there has been a communication, but unfortunately it hasn't reached everybody that needed to know.
Well, no doubt the message will get back to them about communications and the lack of. Councillor Akhtar.
Chair, thank you. Chair, I hear what Pete said and what David said. But these are commercial operators and they will run on basis of making profits. Simple as that. Now, during good time, they make money. During bad time, they are subsidized and making money. That is the reality of deregulation. All our officers are committed, dedicated. They do their best to have negotiation with operators. They also communicate with public. But the fact is, the fares are gone up. And at the time of cost of living crisis, they had grants before when COVID started, and they're still having grants, taxpayers' money, and yet the fares are gone up. So the passengers are paying the price because of this deregulation, and taxpayers is costing them money also. So it's not fair at all, to be quite honest. And all of us We know and we accept the buses are crucial for our economy, for our communities. And it's about time that our political leadership, our board, West Midlands Combined Authority Board, bring forward the franchising has happened in Manchester. Because so many times these operators promise us National Express as a monopoly. There is no competition at all in our region. And it's about time we seriously, I can see it in this paper, that the paper will be coming in December, and we should emphasize and seriously ask our political leadership to make a decision and bring forward franchising.
Thank you very much. Any comments?
Councillor Huxtable.
Okay. Still no comment? No, not yet.
Thank you, Chair. All those points are noted, Councillor. I think it just goes to the point that as we've been going through these negotiations, it's been really clear and apparent that because there have been such significant increases, so I'm not here to defend the position of the operators, but we note that the cost of operation of the bus services has been so significantly impacted as well over the course of the last 3 years. In terms of fuel and labour have been two of the most highly affected inflationary costs that we've seen. The risk that we have at the moment in front of us or faced with this is that we know that around a third of our commercial network, as we currently see it's commercial, is not currently commercial. So without these grants and sustaining measures at this point in time, that would pose a significant risk to the region's bus network, which obviously from Transport West Midlands perspective and the partners is not in the interest of the region and its residents at this point in time. We know this challenge is being reflected up and down the country, but we also recognise that within our region, competition or lack of is a barrier. And to supporting that and ensuring that if there was a significant shift, a seismic shift in the network, how you have the right level of competition to be able to address that at this point in time. All of those are being considered in the full franchising assessment that is evaluating the EP, and the full franchising assessment to come forward, as you say, in December. But just a point of comment.
Just quickly, I'll be a few seconds. Sir, I do understand about enhanced EP, enhanced partnership. But so once again, we will not have control, or Transport West Midlands Combined Authority will not have control over routes or fares or frequency or reliability. And these are the shortcomings in a enhanced partnership. I know we are coming through these phases, but eventually we have to grasp the metal and say enough is enough. We're going to have a transport system which works for our communities and works for our economy. Okay.
I can't disagree or challenge with any of those comments, but noted, and they're all being reviewed as part of the support document.
Thank you, sir.
Quite clearly, we're giving consideration to a future combined authority paper, but a comment. The private sector are delivering public service. There are always risks involved in attempting to deliver that service. But I understand the point Councillor Akhtar is making in that subsidy is available, but we've got to ensure as TDOS that best delivery is possible. So we will look forward to that paper in December. Will that come to us in December, or is it to Combined Authority?
It will be earlier in December, Chair, so I'll work through the actual dates, but because it is for Combined Authority as an interim report in December, so it'll be in advance of that to this committee.
Oh, so we're implementing Dan's timetable then in terms of predetermination?
Yes.
I can't use that word, planning committee, but we will be involved much earlier in the process. That's really good news. I'm sure Councillor Akhtar is delighted to hear that. Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you very much, Chair. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is the role of the West Midlands Bus Alliance. I have to, at this point, declare my membership as a substitute member of the West Midlands Bus Alliance, but perhaps the views of this discussion could be reflected at the next meeting of the Bus Alliance, but also it may be worth, in terms of the governance changes that we talked about earlier, that there is an immediate refresh of the membership of the Bus Alliance to take into account said governance changes. Thank you, Chair.
Very fair point. We'll take that on board.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to comment on that, so we although not with the wider alliance, so we have a meeting set up with the chair of the Bus Alliance, who we know is independent, next week to just reference the changes in governance and the approach of how we move that forward. But then ultimately we will determine that with the wider committee as well. Thank you.
Okay, Craig, we've given this a good airing. I see no other hands. Accept the report. Great. Thank you very much. The next item is the refreshed regional road safety strategy. Darren Duval, who is online.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Is that okay? You can hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies. I realise I'm the only person probably not in the room that's presenting today. Unforeseen circumstance on that one, but apologies for that. But today's paper is about considering the refreshed regional road safety strategy 2023 to 2030, but also endorsing its launch, which was originally planned for the 21st of July, and I'll come on to that any second. So the purpose of the report that was presented before you is to consider the refresh strategy. The first thing to say about that is that this is 2 years in the making. So 2 years ago, the Regional Road Safety Partnership, which consists of all the 7 local authorities, National Highways, Westminster Police, Westminster Fire Service, the Public Health, and a number of charities like the Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents, which are based in Birmingham, would determine that actually the strategy that was in place needed to be refreshed to include some more modern thinking around Vision Zero, although that was alluded to in the original strategy, but be very clear on Vision Zero. I'm going to do some explanation as I go along, because I appreciate that not everybody's been on this journey with us over the last 2 years. But Vision Zero is an acknowledgement that it is unacceptable to have anybody that dies or is seriously injured on our roads. It's just unacceptable to do that, but it cannot be achieved in a very short period of time. It has to be a long-term option and approach. But also we felt that the current target for casualty reduction of a 40% reduction in the number of people killed and seriously injured needed to be enhanced, and that was by 2028, needed to be enhanced to 2030, should I say, a 50% reduction in the number of people killed and seriously injured by 2030. Also, we wanted a broader evidence base that we were measuring performance on. Rather than just going for hard data, we wanted to understand, what road users were involved in those types of incidents, and also the casualties themselves, to understand what was actually causing those particular incidents, and also the casualty severity and injuries that they were sustaining, and what road user types they were. Also, things around societal cost. Societal cost is measured by the number of KSIs, as we call them, killed and seriously injured casualties. We multiply that by the average value of prevention figure, which is a figure that is provided by the Department for Transport every year. So there's a cost for fatalities, for serious injuries, for slight injuries and damage. If we just take the fatal and the serious injuries on that one, and we use that figure, of which it's 2.3 million roughly now per fatality, and about £210,000 per serious injury, we get a societal cost of KSIs on average every year of around £300 million. That societal cost is based on lost output, medical and ambulance services, police, insurance, administration, damage to property, etc. And that is how much killed and serious injured casualties are roughly costing our region as we go through the year, on the number of killed and serious injured casualties we have. So over the last 2 years, we've been developing the strategy and we've taken it through the relevant governance processes. And here we are today asking for endorsement to launch that. Now, originally in this report, it did say the 21st of July, the next WMCA board meeting. But there's been a recent spike in fatal and serious road incidents, particularly involving children, pedestrians, cyclists, and also involving hit and run incidents. And it's created quite a frenzy amongst the media, but also within our communities, quite rightly so, who are concerned about the situation for road safety. It's an unusual spike, but it certainly needs addressing. And what there is at the moment is a concerted effort to expand the work that's happening within our communities. And we have been working with Westminster Police, Westminster Fire, and some residents groups, as well as local authorities, to try to reassure road users of all the work that we're doing. But within all of that, I'm going to use the phrase noise. It's not really noise in real terms, but the noise of all of those things that come to the fore there, the media and the concerns. If we launched the strategy as planned in July, that may be construed as maybe a knee-jerk reaction. It may be construed as something that is completely different than what it is intended for. So what we're suggesting is that we're now going to launch at the WMCA board in September instead, when some of the work that's going on now and the regional campaign that will be launched soon as well with in partnership with the police, that will then hopefully start to give some confidence that we are addressing some of the issues about road safety, and look for that. Now, we're not intending to the intention isn't to come back to delivery operations scrutiny board again with this specific ask. What we're asking for today is that nothing's really going to change on the strategy apart from a couple of minor changes following public engagement and some comments that were fed back. So this is the opportunity hopefully to endorse that refreshed strategy. The reason, part of the reason as well that we looked to refresh the strategy was that whilst during our first two reporting periods of the previous strategy that went to 2028, we did see a 16% reduction in the number of killed and seriously injured casualties. But under no circumstances does our road safety partnership want to rest on its laurels. The last couple of years have been challenging with COVID. And we've seen traffic levels start to increase again, and that's impacted on the data that we have in terms of killed and serious casualties. We felt that we needed to align with both national and international best practice and enhance that target from to a 50% reduction by 2030. And provide some opportunities for more innovation and collaboration within the partnership, and also external from the partnership as well, whilst broadening the evidence base that I mentioned earlier of the different state safety performance indicators on top of the strategy and on top of the long-term target of Vision Zero. So our objectives are to maximise the benefits of collaborative innovation, use the strategy as a lever to secure sustainable internal and external delivery funding and investment, broaden the evidence base and ensure local and regional delivery works collectively. I think what we felt was that there are a number of local road safety strategies as well as the regional one. There's a concurrent power between the Mayor and the 7 local authorities to address road safety issues. And what we wanted to do was ensure that everybody, whether it was delivered locally, whether it was delivered through a regional scheme, we were all working towards one common objective. And that's what this refresh strategy does. Now, we've recently been out to public engagement on this refresh strategy. And whilst it's almost in a way positive that people feel unsafe on the roads in terms of, that it shows us that there's a demand, there's a need for us to continue pushing forward with our objectives for road safety. Obviously, that's not a good thing in real terms. We want to address that. But there's 88% of the respondents, of which there were 328 from 1,364 visitors to the road safety engagement web pages. But 88% of our respondents agreed with the adoption of Vision Zero and that long-term mission. And we had 95% of all respondents as well agree that we really do need to work collaboratively between TFWM and also the local authorities. Now, we phrased it that way in terms of the questions that we asked, simply because that's where the concurrent powers are held. But there are also enforcement powers with the police, for example. Westminster Fire Service also get involved, and other partners get involved in this. So it really tells us that we need to work in partnership together. Almost half of the respondents were satisfied or happy with the enhanced new target, so 50% reduction by 2030 for casualties, with a few that were neutral, about a third that were neutral, and some that were unhappy or dissatisfied. Now, through our anecdotal evidence and feedback that we've got, we know that there were some respondents who were responding that they were unhappy or dissatisfied, not necessarily because they disagreed with the strategy, but because actually they want better. They're demanding more from us. And that's perfectly right. That's another good message for us to get us to understand that we really need to push forward with this refresh strategy. I'll just move on to, what are the next steps here? So what we're intending to do, as I say, is in September, we'll now prepare for a launch of the refresh strategy in the September WMCA board meeting. We're also going to make sure that we've got as much data available as well. This isn't necessarily just the formal data that sits within the measurement of this refresh strategy, but we want to know so much more. There's so much more information out there, and we're working with the police as well, who hold a good deal of data, as well as our own data insights team, and we're working collaboratively to see what the headlines are, but also to really get underneath the skin of that data to understand where it is strategically that we should be putting our resources and our funding. And then from that, we will be continuing to work with our partnership to develop an action plan of how we deliver this strategy. The strategy, or the refresh strategy, is essentially a policy document of what we feel is important and the way that we're going to push forward collaboratively with our partners. But there's going to be a specific action plan that will be launched next year that will be based on a complete broad base of evidence. It will be realistic in the sense that we understand what funding by then that we have to deliver, but realistic also in what we are all able to deliver as partner organisations. Now, we are some way into that already. We're 3 partnership away days we've had already to start that process. But on the 21st of September, we fully intend to also invite portfolio leads for transport to the next away day, which is on the 21st of September, for a political view as well, feeding into that process. And then the one after that we will have, we'll be bringing in the Youth Council, it will be bringing in some residents, and also, as we saw in the one we had last week, it will bring in some victims of road crashes as well, to really push home the message of what it is that we want to deliver. So on that basis, what we're asking for today is to endorse the launch of the refreshed Regional Road Safety Strategy 2023 to 2030, but understanding that there is work to do in developing an action plan that will be launched in 2024, which will include all of the evidence-based actions that allow us all to be working towards a common goal. I know also, as I finished that paper there, I also appreciate that some people might be new to the road safety approach that we've been trying to take over the last couple of years. And I noted that somebody requested some training for this board, and I'm more than happy to be included on the agenda for that. And I'm very happy to come and talk to you about road safety overall and give you a broad idea of what it is, not only what we're trying to achieve, but also what regionally, nationally and internationally, what best practice is. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren, for that comprehensive report. Just a quick question in terms of governance, and really your first port of call with members. I'm looking at one of the MEGs, the member engagement groups, and the obvious one that comes to mind is passenger safety. Would you be liaising with the champion of that body in the first instance, or would you be looking to come to committee?
In terms of the governance process moving forward, is that, sorry?
Yes.
Okay, so if I just take a step back, actually, maybe I should have said is we've been to the TFWM leadership team, we've been to senior leadership team, we've been to Strategic Transport Board with Councillor Ward, who was chairing at the time, and we've been to the Road Safety Forum, and then what we're doing now is coming to you, and the intention then from here is on Wednesday we go to Executive Board. On Friday this week we'll be going to the Mayor and Portfolio Leads meeting, and then the next meeting after that would be WMCA board in September. Now, as I say, I'm more than happy to come and talk to people either individually or as a group. And Councillor Hire, apologies that we haven't managed to catch up. I did call and leave a couple of messages. I know you asked some questions last week, so apologies we haven't spoken directly just yet. But I'm more than happy to do that to ensure that everybody's aware of what it is. But we haven't specifically got anything planned in for the group that you mentioned.
Okay, what comes to mind are those famous words, not another one. As a committee, however, I think it is important if you wish the involvement of TDOS. Yes, I'm very willing to hear your willingness of coming to meet the appropriate MEG. Anne wants to make comment.
I just wanted to support what Darren said. There's been quite a lot of engagement with all road safety officers within the local authorities who we hope that they keep you also engaged in what's happening on many topics, not just road safety. The member engagement group for putting passengers first tends to focus more on public transport. So it's how do we make sure that we're actually looking at road users overall, as opposed to just those on public transport as well. But I think Darren and the team are happy to come and talk to the relevant member engagement group where this is a specific topic. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a suggestion because at our group meeting we also thought which MEG to this come under, and perhaps the passenger safety MEG that you indicated.
Agreed.
Would also take into account road safety, so it could be passenger and road safety. Because as has been said, passenger safety is about the safety of passengers on public transport, which is absolutely important. I think this is a different nuance from a safety viewpoint and would seem to dovetail quite well with it. The other comment I was going to have, which has already been partially answered, is how is it dovetailing with the road safety strategies of the individual local authorities? Because I know certainly from a Birmingham perspective that the refresh of the road safety strategy is on the work programme for the Transport Scrutiny Committee of the City Council as well. And it seems sensible for the two work in cooperation.
That's very helpful, Councillor Huxtable. We will take that on board. Please raise the item about the wording of passenger safety, because I think it is particularly relevant on item 11. Okay, Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that always concerns me about the Combined Authority is the need for more communication. Did you communicate with local councils the fact that there was an engagement survey available? Did you give it to local councils to share with their residents, or even for local councils to share with councillors to share with their residents to increase the database? Because 328 people out of the huge number of people within the West Midlands conurbation is extraordinarily small. And I think that there's an easy chance, that won't cost a lot of money for you to increase your database and therefore get more valid results.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there was quite a few more that actually came to the website, and also trying to fill in the survey, but they were incomplete, so we didn't include those within the 328. But we engaged with our intelligence team and consultation team, and went out through Commonplace, our Commonplace portal, which is where a lot of our engagement takes place. Also, our partnership members, which are obviously of the 7 local authorities as well as other organisations, were fully aware of this and had the details to circulate as they felt appropriate. So but I suppose the difference here, if we tried here with a public engagement, we still do want as many responses as we can. This is more than we've had in previous experience for this one, but also what we fully intend to do, there's some lessons to learn from the results we've got from there. Particularly on demographics and how and when. For example, I noticed we mentioned social media here earlier on, and we know that for the 16 to 24-year-olds, TikTok is the platform that we really need to use. So those lessons will be learned with the action plan, because the action plan isn't just going to have public engagement exercise, it's actually going to have a formal consultation exercise. So that will be hard copies. That'll be use of social media, it'll be use of Commonplace, it'll be use of paid advertising, and we'll be using our partnership fully to circulate the details of the action plan as it goes forward as well. So that sort of part answers your question, I realise, Councillor Hyatt, but in terms of where we are at the moment, we are sort of at the behest sometimes of our partnership to support and circulate around when we're trying to engage, and I hope that did happen.
Just to add to what Darren has said, is that we our comms and engagement team here in the Combined Authority always liaises with the comms and engagement teams at each of the 7 local authorities, as well as all of the officers being involved in designing up the consultation questions as part of that as well. So we try to make sure that that collaboration happens across the local authorities and the Combined Authority, so that we try to get the biggest reach that we can as well. So that has happened in this instance. But not lots of people don't choose to engage or only partially fill in some of the information as well.
You can take a horse to water. Councillor Hyatt.
Just say, and quoting the words, I think of Marianne Page, who was our Transport Strategic Lead Officer, we weren't told about Navilens. Navilens is a combined authority initiative which would allow people with poor sight to be able to know where they are in the bus station. And the comment of our strategic lead officer in transport was, I wish that we'd been told about this. We would have been able to contribute, we would have been able to give publicity. So we haven't found that reality, I'm afraid, at the minute in Wolverhampton, although I have made sure that Richard White, who is our comms lead, has made contact with Transport for Wolverhampton vis-a-vis the new corporate transport.
Sure.
Darren?
Yeah, sorry, so just yeah, we're in constant engagement with the team in Wolverhampton, with John Charles and his team, and Marianne as well, and also engaged with Black Country Transport quite a lot as well, with Stuart and the team, with Richard Warren. In fact, I was on the phone with him the other day on some things that we could do quite innovative in Wolverhampton, so and within that part of the region. You know, I think there's always lessons that we can learn. There's always things that we could do differently, and we're striving to make sure that we can do those, and we'll continue to do that. If Chair, I might just come back to the Birmingham strategy comments from earlier. Is that we've also been in contact with Martin Rowe, who's leading that from a technical perspective, as well as Mel Jones, Phil Edwards, along that route, and we are aware of that strategy, and we've both been working together to make sure that there's an alignment with Vision Zero and the strategy targets and the approach that we want to take, and recognising that there will be some differences. For example, the desire for a lot more local neighbourhoods that want to be produced or developed within Birmingham, but that's more like what we think about local priorities, as well as supported to some extent by the regional priorities and objectives as well, and making sure that regardless of whether it's for a local priority or whether it's for a regional priority, that the Birmingham strategy and all the other strategies that come through as well, and the regional strategy are all aligned and working towards that one common goal of Vision Zero, the 50% reduction target, and all the other safety performance indicators as well.
Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the full strategy as one of 8 newbies in the room today. I think it would have been quite useful if I'd have had a link to the full strategy, so I could have put it into context. At the moment, I've just got the update and I haven't got the actual full picture. So it's just that in future, can you please remember to just link to full strategies for those of us who haven't been here for that long. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
But can you send out the link this afternoon for this paper as well?
Yes, I can send a link. We're just finalising the final comments that came through from the public engagement. So it still will be an update at the moment. But what I could do, as soon as we've got those complete, I would then be able to send you a link to the final document. Would that be okay?
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the report that's just been given. Very useful, some of the points, but of course, us newer members, this is a continuation, and as has been said, we've missed some of the earlier presentations. However, I was particularly interested in the section on the road safety, which is the accidents on pavements. Some local members in Sandwell believe that West Midlands Combined Authority have added to the road safety problem on our pavements by reissuing last year the licence for the electric scooters. We think these are a deadly device and ought to be banned on our roads, the electric scooters. If I may just make a comment on something else, Sandwell has recently restarted doing what we call pupil courts. The local schools go out with the police and use the radar guns to check the speed of the passing traffic of the cars, etc., going past the schools. And if someone is very over the speed limit, they ask the drivers to come into the school and face the pupils. We found in the past that those were very, very useful, and many of the drivers finished up crying at what they'd done. And we think that this ought to be expanded again. It was wide scale at one time, but it stopped happening for some reason. Sandwell have started doing it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, Dan?
Sure. Yeah, the e-scooter thing, we are, regardless of the trial periods and the trial schemes, we are still also waiting for regulation from government on that. They've not really given a great deal away about what that will or might not include, but obviously we are aware and keeping ourselves abreast of all the results of all the trial schemes that have been going ahead so that we can address them when need be. There's other schemes around pavements as well, and potentially some new enforcement schemes coming next year, or a scheme coming next year, if it depends what's happened with national government, obviously, and policy changes, but we're expecting some movement on that one coming forward. The other one about pupil courts, yes, Simon Chadwick, who's leading the road safety work, is working with Gareth Mason, Superintendent Mason at Westminster Police, as well as coming to the partnership to talk to us about the pupil courts. It's just been reinvigorated. It's a really interesting scheme, so we see how that one goes and see about whether it should be expanded. Yeah.
Thank you. You okay? Please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to raise the question which just in a different way to what's just been posed to us. And that is one of the things I'm suffering with in my ward at the moment is residents are actually using the pavement to park on. This is causing a lot of distress, especially for the partly sighted or people using the pavement, or pushing a wheelchair or whether it's a pram or whatever it may be, find it extremely difficult. What is happening, they come to the obstruction on the pavement, and then of course they've got to go in the carriageway to get by. And sometimes you've got drivers blowing their horns at them, wonder why they're walking in the road and things like that. I'm fully aware that this is not a local authority matter, it's a West Midlands police matter, because their responsibility lies with obstructions and obstruction on the pavement, you know what I mean, it's causing a lot of problem. I've raised this several times with our local sergeant to see if they can do some enforcement, but we don't seem to be getting anywhere at all with it. But it is becoming a really big problem, especially where you've got several people now using the pavement as a parking area, and then people having to walk in the road. Really needs sorting out one way or the other. And what I suggested to the police was, once they start putting a few tickets on, it may act as a deterrent. And the reply was, well, it's cheap parking to have 2 tickets, only 60 quid, which I didn't think was a very good response. So I got back.
Yeah, sure. And you may have noticed that we've got these devolved powers now where local authorities are able to apply for a designation order for moving traffic contraventions, which is being progressed at the moment. The thing that I was alluding to a minute ago is that depends as to what happens with policy at national government, but there may be a similar thing for pavement parking enforcement. Is what we're told, maybe from next year onwards, where it'll be a concurrent power between local authorities and the police to enforce on that. But we will have to see if that comes to fruition.
Thank you, Darren.
Yes, point, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Right, Councillor Hyatt.
Can I just ask, with regard to electric scooters, are they geo-limited like in Liverpool, where the accident rate for electric scooters is exactly the same as that for cycles? But they are geo-limited quite considerably, both in terms of the speed that they can go at and in terms of the areas that they are, you know, they will work in. Like you can't drive a scooter down this high street where all the shops are and it's very busy. They just don't work. Have we got that system in West Midlands?
I'll answer that for Darren if that's okay.
Thank you, Anne.
See, Darren's not directly involved, but has been working with the team at TFWM who've been doing the pilots on e-scooters, because we're in the process of transitioning from a pilot that has ended into a new pilot. As Darren said, we're waiting for the legislation from government. The pilot scheme that we operate has all of those safety measures in, so the geofencing and restricting speed in certain locations as well. And as we're entering into a new pilot, we're making sure that the operator's being quite robust about those as well. What it doesn't deal with is the number of people who've got their own personal e-scooter, which we have no control over either ourselves. They're illegal on the road if they're not part of a pilot scheme, and the rental scooters that we've got as well. And that is one thing that Darren and the team with West Midlands Police are looking at, how we can help try to enforce some better behaviours around those. But we have limited control, well, no control actually, where people own their own personal e-scooter.
Okay, we've given this a good hearing. We have some recommendations to consider on page 11. Are they agreed? Items 1 and 2?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 11, appointment of scrutiny champions and member engagement groups. The respective groups have submitted their proposals for membership and scrutiny champions. Can I suggest that those meetings are hybrid, and whilst 5 members have been identified for each MEG, the attendance online will be welcomed, but if there does come up, but obviously the 5 members identified will be required to take the vote. Are we comfortable with that? Nobody's shouting at me, so I'm taking that as yes. The other thing.
No, let you finish, Chair. Don't have to finish. Go on. You asked me to move that the 6th MEG be rebranded road and passenger safety.
Thank you. That does remind me, actually, there are names identified there. Some of them perhaps are historic. We do need to look at the names, can I suggest that the respective scrutiny champions look at their respective names and of their committee and confirm that they are appropriate for today. For example, we may wish to give some emphasis to climate change, those sorts of issues. Okay. And can I request that the champions and the chair and vice chair meet very quickly to discuss how we will have a identified programme for the year and report back to committee at the next meeting. Okay. Are we content with this item? Dan, is there anything else you wish to add?
Not particularly, Chair, but perhaps just for the record, I'll circulate the list of all the members on each meg separately by email, but just perhaps just for the committee's interest, the 6 scrutiny champions that your groups have appointed. I'll just quickly: Air Quality, Congestion and Environment is Councillor Ward, Finance and Performance, Councillor Akhtar, Passenger First, Councillor Locke, Road and Passenger Safety is Councillor Stanley, Rail Metro, Sprint and Active Travel is Councillor Huxtable, and Sustainability, Councillor McCarthy.
Are we content?
John? Yeah. I assume there's a contact officer for each of these committees. Is that, if that the name of those can be circulated, it helps.
Yes.
Chair, that's right. So each meg has a lead officer, and we will put each other.
Excellent, thank you. Right, next item is 12, draft work programme.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the draft work programme was included within your agenda pack. As mentioned earlier, it's a rolling programme. So welcome your views, thoughts today, or please feel free to email myself, Dan or Jana. And the other thing I would add, the key thing would be when the permanent chair is appointed for this committee, we'll be working closely with the chair, vice chair and members of the committee to develop the work programme. So happy to take any views now or later.
Just for clarity then, we've just agreed to set up the megs and the champions. Presumably you will populate the work programme for report backs on a regular basis. We wouldn't want all 6 to be reporting at each meeting, but there will be a way of dealing with that.
Yes, Chair, they'll be programmed in.
Any questions, any questions, any comments? I see none. Are we content? Yep. Thank you. So the date of the next meeting is identified as Monday, the 4th of September at 1 o'clock. We shall note that. Can we get the whole year identified and into the diary, because it's easier to put something in at the beginning of the year than halfway through, so that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, those dates should be in your diaries. The invite's gone out, but we'll send an email out with the date, but you'll have electronic invites already in your diary.
Sure. You have the parking issue that I've raised earlier.
Yes, well, actually, there isn't an AOB on here, but please, let's take this as an AOB, please. Goodbye.
Sorry.
The parking.
Yes, as I mentioned to you earlier on, we as elected members, when we come into the meetings, we have to book in the parking several days before. And sometimes we do forget about it, so we end up paying for the parking when we bring our vehicles over. Could that be included into the people that use cars to come to the meetings? Have that space available for them when the meeting are scheduled? Thank you.
Chair, what we've done when we sent the papers out was I'll remind members that if they wanted car parking spacing, we could do that. But I appreciate you get lots of emails, and it's very easy to miss that. What I will do is contact you outside of this meeting. If you're saying you want a space for every meeting, then we can arrange that. But what I would do is I'll just say to you is if it's just an occasional meeting that you want space to, when we send the agenda out, we'll remind members, and hopefully that will be the prompt. But we'll speak to you separately. If you say I'm going to turn up every time in my car, we can book that. But also, what we don't want to do, there are limited spaces. We don't want to book spaces that aren't then going to be used. So if you're only likely to be an occasional user, then again, I would ask them to get set the agenda the week before. You just reply to that email. That will be sufficient time to ensure that you have a space.
Those using public transport to come here, will the previous Swift card policy be continued? Do we know?
Yeah, so in respect of cards that were issued that previously were in existence, yes, there will been a change of policy across the Combined Authority, which probably best is described as if you have a legacy card, it will be honoured for as long as you're a member of the committee. In the instance of members who were formerly on Transport Delivery Committee, that would be a yes, but for new members, that isn't the case now, as the Combined Authority changes its policy in respect of issuing cards. Sorry, Chair, one other thing I should have said on the back of that, because as a member, you shouldn't be incurring costs personally for you to carry out your role as a councillor. So any cost that you do, whether it's car parking across the road or whether it's travel by train, any costs that you incur in attending these meetings personally will be reimbursed by the Combined Authority. There's arrangements for that. So certainly no member will be out of pocket in carrying out their duties on this committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Huxtable, Councillor Hyatt, Councillor Amelia.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just two very brief items. One, we have taken previously the opportunity of briefing sessions in the morning of what was TDC. And I know a lot of members have found that particularly useful in the past. And when we talked about governance arrangements, briefings were actually mentioned. So I just throw that one into the melting pot, because it used to be the chair and the vice chairs who decided what briefing should actually be taken forward as part of the agenda setting meeting. And the second is that members of this, well, the predecessor committee, the Transport Delivery Committee, may well know that there's a frequent attender who is sitting in the public gallery today, who also accompanied us on site visits. And I believe he's celebrating a significant birthday later on this month. And I think we should all wish him a very happy birthday in advance for those celebrations. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. But I'm glad you didn't suggest that we sing. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Thank you.
And on your first point, yes, it makes eminent sense to continue with that opportunity of a briefing on the day of TDOS, because why come here twice when we can get it sorted on the same day? It makes eminent sense. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Hyatt.
Chair, is there an open invitation for members of the committee to submit possible things to be on our agenda in committee meetings? And there's some projects that was like in Coventry, where there's a combination of services that it would be nice to get an update on and to have on the agenda. And this second thing that I wanted to say is to alert members that on the 13th of July is the deadline for commenting on the government's roads programme. It can be found on the government website. It's interesting reading, especially as the Transport Action Network have said that the policy is not to be fit for purpose. It's quite controversial. So I don't know
it is just to make you aware that there's an opportunity to comment on the government's raised programme.
Any comments?
So on your first point, councillor, in respect of raising items, yes, and hopefully that point came through in the presentation I gave earlier. It's not to say that automatically the most appropriate way would be on this agenda, but what I would urge you to do, and all councillors, and we'll circulate her contact details afterwards as well, but Lindsay, who's the scrutiny officer for the Combined Authority, if there are issues that you wish to raise with your scrutiny hat on, so to speak, the first point would be to contact Lindsay. We can then look at that, consider how it might best be, whether that's through a mayor, whether it's through this committee, whether it's through a briefing that the chair just referred to. But absolutely, I would urge you to contact Lindsay with ideas and suggestions of topics that you're interested in, so that there is a very strong member for each day engagement. So yeah, but we'll, for everyone, we will circulate contact details. You've got those, but that will be the first instance.
So Lindsay's the first port of call on every matter. Okay. Councillor Miller, you did indicate.
Question answered, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to raise anything in ALB? No? Oh, Peter.
Okay, sorry, earlier on we had the discussion about services and the £2 fare cap. So I just wanted to clarify that, so in discussions with Diamond Bus during this meeting, that there are certain services that are eligible and certain services which are ineligible. And that seems to have been through a further discussion that's taken place since we met with them. So Councillor Stanley, I think you said it was service 27. Yeah, so I just wanted that point of clarification. I will take that away further for you, but just to clarify for all members that there are some services which are ineligible for the fare cap, and we will find out what they are and make that information available.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Bond, I didn't want to shout over, but after the meeting concludes, do you think I could have a quick word with you? Thank you.
Well, okay. Can I just thank everybody for the first meeting of TDOS. I think it's gone extremely well. We've had a couple of controversial items raised: franchising, e-scooters, and this point about the Swift card policy, where existing members are entitled to continue with that facility and other members aren't, doesn't strike the right chord in my mind, and it's something that perhaps should be pursued and understood better. So with that, I will thank you for your attendance and declare the meeting closed.